Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and today we're taking a look at the all-new for 2014 Cadillac CTS. Cadillac has long been trying to be a major player in this luxury segment, dominated by BMW as well as Mercedes, and they've had a little bit of a rocky road getting there. The first generation Cadillac CTS drove like a BMW, but it didn't look or feel like a BMW in terms of quality on the inside. It was also sort of a half step in size between the BMW 3 Series and a BMW 5 Series, and therefore also between a Mercedes-Benz C-Class and an E-Class. That's been fixed with this latest generation of Cadillac sedan. We now have the Cadillac ATS doing business with the 3 Series and the Mercedes-Benz C-Class. It's much smaller than the Cadillac CTS. It's also very BMW-like. It actually is exactly what a BMW would have been like if Cadillac had been building it. Drives very much like the last generation BMW 3 Series, which is a very good thing. Now we have this 2014 Cadillac CTS, which has grown about 2 inches overall this year, meaning that it's bigger than the current generation BMW 5 Series and the Mercedes E-Class, so it's a definite solid E-Class 5 Series competitor now. I'm going to try and forget about the Cadillac XTS for just a little bit, because Cadillac would like you to believe that it's a 7 Series S-Class competitor. However, it's really more of a Lexus ES competitor. You can get it with all-wheel drive, and for this year you can get it with a twin-turbo V6, but everything about that Cadillac XTS is really more Lexus ES than Lexus LS, 7 Series, or S-Class. When I first saw the Cadillac CTS in its original release photos, I have to say I was impressed, and it looks even better in person. I really like angular lines, and so the Cadillac's art and science design theme really works for me. We have this bold grille up here, and we have what looks sort of like a Cadillac fin continuing from the rear down to the front of the car. These are daytime running lights. They also turn on when you unlock or lock the car. And our vehicle here has the optional HID headlamps. Very much like the BMW and Mercedes competition, you don't get the fancy headlamps in the base model. You only get those in certain up-level packages. Right here we get front parking sensors in the 2014 CTS. We also get some additional ultrasonic sensors right here. These are for the optional self-parking system available in the Cadillac CTS. And new for 2014, we now have a virtual bumper system. This is very much like what Infiniti has been touting on some of their latest models. It'll actually brake the car for you if you're in a parking low-speed type situation and it thinks you're going to hit something. It'll actually apply the brakes fully to keep you from bumping into something like another car or a garbage can or a wall, something along those lines. The side profile of CTS reminds me of a slightly classier Chrysler 300. We have this nice long hood, which definitely is a great rear-wheel drive proportion. This is something that you don't find in something like an Audi A6, because the Audi A6 really is a front-wheel drive by default vehicle, because its engine is almost entirely in front of the front axle, so the proportions are just a little bit different between that and something that's truly rear-wheel drive, like a Cadillac CTS, a BMW 5 Series, or a Mercedes-Benz E-Class. You can also tell how much this has grown in this version because this rear door is now fairly long. We have a fairly attractive but also fairly short trunk back here. Out back, Cadillac's angular theme continues, and again I find this incredibly attractive for this segment. I find this an awful lot more exciting than something like an Audi A6, which is just a little bit boring. Decent amount more exciting than the BMW. The BMW goes for elegant and refined rather than a little bit bold. And I strangely enough find this very similar in theme to the Mercedes-Benz E-Class, which is also going for an angular theme. However, I think that the Cadillac does it with just a little bit more flair. We have these sort of proto-fins back here, which don't stick up quite as high as the Cadillac XTS, but I think this is a design cue that I kind of like. We also have the Cadillac signature single rear backup light right there in the middle, kind of an attractive touch, and the dual hidden exhaust tips even on the 2.0T model. Nestled under this hood, we have a thoroughly modern 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine with direct injection as well as variable valve timing. This engine produces 272 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, which is a decent boost over the 2-liter turbo inside the BMW 528. Very much like that BMW 528, one thing I'd like to point out here is that this 4-cylinder engine is entirely behind the front axle, which gives you a very good weight balance. This is quite different than something like an Audi, where the engine would be almost entirely in front of the axle, or front-wheel drive vehicles like a Volvo or a Lincoln or whatever, where the engine would be literally on top of the front axle. There's also a 3.6-liter V6 engine. It's good for 321 horsepower, 274 pound-feet of torque, and a twin turbocharged version of that same 3.6-liter V6, good for 420 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. Things start to change a little bit from the German competition after the engine, because this 2-liter turbo engine is mated to a 6-speed General Motors automatic transmission. Now, there's nothing wrong with the GM 6-speed automatic. BMW had been using them for years until they moved entirely to the ZF 8-speed. It's that it's 2 gears behind that ZF 8-speed that you'll find in the Audi as well as the BMW, and it's 1 gear behind Mercedes-Benz 7-speed automatic transmission. Now, if you opt for the 3.6-liter V6 engine, you can upgrade from this 6-speed automatic to an 8-speed automatic that's purchased from Aisin. It's essentially the same 8-speed automatic that you find in a number of Lexus models. If you get the twin-turbo V6, then that 8-speed automatic is standard. You can opt for all-wheel drive on any model for an optional $2,000. As you'd expect from a luxury car, front seat comfort is excellent in the CTS. Our version has the optional 20-way adjustable driver's seat with power adjustable side bolsters, a manual extending thigh cushion, and a 4-way manual adjusting headrest. We also have this power memory tilt telescope steering wheel with a decent range of motion. I don't think these seats are quite as comfortable as BMW's optional sport seats that contort in a million different directions, but these are more comfortable than BMW's standard seats in the BMW 5 Series. I also find these a decent amount more comfortable than the current seats in the Mercedes-Benz E-Class as well. Now, the CTS isn't the full-size Cadillac I remember from my youth, but that's not really a Cadillac problem because the BMW 5 Series and the Mercedes-Benz E-Class aren't any bigger than this in the back seat either. So I'm 6 feet tall, this front seat's adjusted for me, and I still have a few inches of legroom left there. If you want more legroom, then you're going to have to go for something like a Cadillac XTS if you want to stay in the Cadillac family. If I move over to this passenger seat, if it's really even possible, I might need to leave one leg over there. This front seat was adjusted for a 6'5" passenger, and my knee is digging right into that seat back, so I couldn't do that for very long. We do have these split folding optional rear seats that do fold almost completely flat with the cargo area. That is kind of a nice feature. And we also get a center armrest in the back with an additional ski pass-through. Let's take a look around the interior. We have height adjustable seat belts there, as well as these 4-way adjustable front headrests. You can also see in the back that we have the optional sunshades for the side windows, as well as the sunshade in the rear. We have these perforated leather seats. Leather is an option in the Cadillac CTS. It's not standard in all models. We do have the perforated cooled leather seats, however. We also have this very, very attractive combination leather, pleather, and Alcantara door trim right there. So you can see we have leather on top, which is then stitched to Alcantara. Then we have a carbon fiber trim insert with some contrasting red lines that run through it. Then we have this lovely red leather down there, very soft, comfortable armrests, and a little bit of extra storage in the door. That theme continues if we move on to the dashboard here, and you can see we have the glove box right here in red. We have the upper dash trim. Everything is a soft touch plastic. All this red leather here is also nicely stitched on the bottom. If we move over to the center of the dashboard, we have this injection molded perforated look right here on top with another pleather or leather section right there. And then we have the same sort of stitching effect going all the way down the center console, meeting in the middle. One thing I'd like to point out is how nicely done these seams are. If you recall my video of the Cadillac XTS, we did notice a few fit and finish problems. Those are really not existing in this Cadillac CTS. Everything here is done extraordinarily well. Like the ATS and the XTS, we also get the Cadillac Q infotainment system, although our particular tester here does seem to have a more recent software update than we've had in the past. If you want to know more about the infotainment system, then go ahead and click on that link below and be scooted over to that video. We also have an opening section right here. It's all touch driven, and that little cubby opens and you'll find a USB slot right there so that way you can hide your iPhone or your iWidget or whatever it is that you'd like to hide in there. And we have our climate control buttons here. They're all touch driven. None of these are physical buttons. And we haven't noticed any of the same ghosting effects that we noticed in the Cadillac XTS. Right here we have our shifter. We have 2 large cup holders easily capable of holding the largest size takeout soda. And this cup holder is electrically operated. If I move the cable out of the way, you can see this. You just pull on that little handle and the door slides open and closed. We have our little ashtray there with a little cubby and a power socket. And then if we move to our center console, it opens sideways away from the driver. Inside the center console, which is fairly large for a rear-wheel drive car, you'll find 2 additional USB inputs, an optional 120-volt power adapter, and a 12-volt power outlet right there. Our CTS has the optional 12-inch LCD instrument cluster, which is incredibly attractive. This is easily one of the best LCD instrument clusters on the market. Part of that is because of how configurable this is. So if we go down to the settings option in this screen, you can choose various different display layouts. You can choose a traditional dial-based layout, which is very similar to what you'll find in other LCD instrument clusters out on the market like Jaguar and Land Rovers. What makes this system different from the others is that it has different layouts, like this performance layout, simple layout. They're very well animated as well. And then my personal preference is this enhanced layout, which gives you a little bit more information than the other screens. You can also change what is displayed on these. So this center section you can have as settings. You can also have it as your audio or your phone interface, or navigation if you're currently navigating somewhere. This little section up here is always going to be the map in the enhanced view. And this section down here on the left and the corresponding one over there on the right can be a variety of different things you can choose from. You have a trip computer, fuel range, fuel economy, travel time, etc. You can cycle through all those and you can maintain them on a set screen. And then over here on the far right, we have our standard fuel gauge. If we back out from that, you can see that we have a very attractive leather-wrapped steering wheel. This is full grain leather rather than half grain leather, so it's not quite as soft as some vehicles, but it probably will last longer. Very attractive shift pedals back there, and a leather airbag cover, which is very nice. Over here we have our 2-position seat memory, our window switch controls down there below, and then right here we have the controls for our heads-up display, which is optional in the Cadillac CTS. You can also see from this vantage point that we have excellently executed seams and gaps. In fact, everything on the Cadillac CTS is executed with a precision that I really wasn't sure that Cadillac could achieve, given their performance over the last few years, but they really have excelled themselves in this 2014 CTS. Might be a little bit tricky to tell, but this is the optional heads-up display in the CTS. Right now we're seeing the compass view. We also have a tachometer, we have speed limit information, as well as infotainment information. We also get navigation directions in this system if the navigation was active, as well as cruise control information displayed in the upper left of that screen. Cadillac system is more exciting than other versions of General Motors heads-up display, but it's not quite as good looking as BMW's latest full-color version of their heads-up system in the 3 and 5 series. This Caddy scores 7 out of 10 points in our exclusive trunk comfort index. It's not furnished quite as nicely as the German competition, if I'm honest, in the trunk. Not that many people will be riding in your trunk, but it is something that you'll probably notice when you go shopping. The other thing you'll notice are these trunk hinges, which do occupy a decent amount of trunk space, something that I was a little bit saddened by. We do get a nice grab handle right here on the trunk, but the trunk lid feels a little bit lighter than the German competition as well. Overall, I score this probably 1 point below the BMW 5 Series or the Mercedes-Benz E-Class. Every version of the Cadillac CTS has driven extraordinarily well, and that's certainly true for this latest edition of the Cadillac CTS. This definitely drives like a solid competitor to the BMW 5 Series as well as the Mercedes-Benz E-Class. I'm excluding the Audi A6 from that because the Audi A6 is predominantly a front-wheel drive car or an all-wheel drive car. If you really look at the Audi A6 sales, a decent number of them are sold in front-wheel drive only in the United States. And that design of the chassis in the Audi A6 is very nose heavy, and that's not happening here in the Cadillac CTS. This is a near perfect 50-50 weight balance, just like a BMW 528, because that engine is almost entirely behind the front axle. Really helps out on these winding mountain roads where you have a great feel to this chassis. Handles every corner, every curve exceptionally well, with an awful lot of finesse and refinement, something that you wouldn't normally have said associated with the Cadillac brand in the 1990s or the 1980s, something along those lines. This is an entirely different Cadillac to the Cadillac that I grew up with. In terms of performance figures, the 2.0T dishes out 60 in 5.9 seconds, and that's because of the 6-speed automatic. I would expect that this engine paired with an 8-speed automatic would be a little bit faster to 60. That's definitely something we've seen out of something like a BMW 528. Those extra 2 gears help the BMW 528's engine, which is less powerful than this Cadillac CTS engine, be very competitive in terms of performance with the Cadillac CTS. One thing to keep in mind when shopping is that the 3.6-liter V6 produces more horsepower but less torque than this 2.0T, and so performance really isn't that different between this 2.0 and the 3.6-liter engine. I would probably save my money if I were you and buy the 2.0T over the 3.6-liter V6 engine for that reason only. Now, the 3.6-liter V6 is available with the 8-speed automatic, and that does make it a little bit faster than this 2.0T model, but it is optional. It's not standard with that 3.6-liter V6. Compared to BMW and Mercedes' small 4-cylinder engines, this CTS 2.0T is a little bit noisier. Actually, it's an awful lot noisier. The cabin isn't really that noisy in the CTS. It's about 67, 68 decibels out on the road at 50 miles an hour, but there is a decent amount of engine noise intrusion, and it's not the most refined engine sound, if I'm very honest. That being said, the interior is fairly quiet, and I would still probably have this 2.0T over the very smooth 3.6-liter V6. You just have to know that even though this engine isn't as refined sounding as the Mercedes or the BMW engines, it honestly is just about as smooth. It's really just that General Motors isn't blocking quite as much engine noise from the cabin. Unlike the BMW 528, the CTS 2-liter turbo engine does not have an auto start-stop feature. So when we stop at a stop sign like this one right here, the engine doesn't shut down. That does result in a slight perception of more refinement in the Cadillac CTS because people have complained a decent amount about BMW's start-stop system that isn't happening in the CTS. Although the flip side of that coin is the CTS does get slightly worse city mileage as a result. Although in terms of mileage, we have been averaging about 24 miles per gallon, which is fairly good for a sedan of this size. It really helps that the CTS isn't terribly heavy. This is a few hundred pounds lighter than a comparable BMW 5 Series, which already is a fairly light sedan for the size of the vehicle. That really helps in terms of performance, agility, as well as fuel economy. We also have the optional MagneRide suspension in this particular CTS, which really helps the cornering ability of this car out on these winding mountain roads. We have two different suspension modes. We have normal and we have a sport mode, and sport firms things up, but it doesn't get rock hard like you'd expect out of something like a Corvette or something along those lines. It doesn't ever get that hard. The immediate parallel that comes immediately to my mind is Volvo's old R series of cars, where their adaptive suspension had a rock hard bolted to the frame kind of mode. That's really not happening in the CTS. It does firm things up nicely, but it's still passable for driving down a gravel road. Don't take that to mean that the standard suspension mode in the CTS is soft by any measure. This is a fairly competent, firm sport suspension any way you slice it, something that I really like. Out on these winding mountain roads, the CTS is fairly numb behind the wheel, but that's just the fault of modern electric power steering, and it's the same story in the E-Class and the 5 Series. Someone once told me, don't mistake heavy steering for steering with feel, and thankfully that's not a problem in the Cadillac CTS like it is in certain other German cars. A number of German cars these days are just as numb as the competition, but then they have really heavy steering for no apparent reason other than trying to compensate for the lack of steering feel, and it really doesn't do the job. Instead, the CTS is fairly nicely weighted all the way around. In terms of transmission feel, the General Motors 6-speed automatic transmission has had a few rough shifts over our week with this car. I'm not quite sure whether that's due to the fuzzy logic programming of this system that sort of adapts to your shifts as you drive, or whether it's an inherent part of the 6-speed automatic transmission. I didn't notice it with the Cadillac ATS when we had it for a week, but I did notice that this 6-speed automatic is not as smooth or as quick shifting as a ZF 6-speed automatic transmission that you used to find in the German competition. And now, of course, the Germans have all moved on to the 8-speed ZF automatic transmission, which is lightning fast and has a wider gear ratio spread. ZF's 8-speed is very quick shifting, it's also very smooth, and not that the 6-speed General Motors automatic transmission is a bad transmission, but when you compare it head-to-head with 8-speed automatics in the competition, the wider gear ratio spread in those transmissions and the faster shifts really help milk the most out of every engine that's connected to them. While not strictly part of the drive section, Cadillac has an interesting way of communicating feedback to the driver in terms of lane departure warning, parking sensors, as well as their pre-collision warning system, and they do it via a vibrating seat cushion. This is something that I found really handy in this car. If you're approaching an object with your parking sensors, it vibrates the front of the seat. If you're crossing a lane line, it vibrates one of your cheeks, left or right, depending on which lane line your butt has crossed. And I find it to be less obtrusive than the annoying beeping systems in other cars. The people in the car also don't know that you've crossed the lane line because it just vibrates your bottom rather than alerting everyone into the car that you're a bad driver. As with most entries in the luxury car space, pricing is fairly complicated for the 2014 CTS. Things start out at $45,100 for the base model 2.0T. As tested here, you're looking at $58,325. Things top out in the 2.0T model at $62,725. If you opt for that 3.6-liter twin-turbo engine, that's the most expensive CTS you can get at the moment, and that's $70,000 at the moment. The big thing to know about it is that all across the board, it's about $4,000 to $5,000 cheaper than a comparably equipped BMW 5 Series. It's a little bit cheaper even still than a comparably equipped Mercedes-Benz E-Class, and the E-Class is probably one of the better comparisons with the Cadillac CTS because they also have a twin-turbo V6. Versus something like an Audi A6, pricing is still a little bit cheaper than that, and of course compared to the middle-tier luxury brands like Volvo, Acura, etc., it's a decent amount more expensive. So let's go over some of the pricing details that you should probably know as a shopper. The first thing to know is the base CTS doesn't have leather seats. It has imitation leather seats. If you want to do that, then you have to have the $51,925 luxury package, which also gets you heated, cooled seats. The split rear seats, that's not an option in the regular one, so they don't fold down. We get the heated steering wheel, lane departure warning, those HID headlamps, and a backup camera. The version we've been showing you here is the performance model, which includes the magnetic ride control, heads-up display, navigation, Bose sound system, sunroof, automated parking system. We get sunshades on the rear doors as well as on that rear window, illuminated door handles, as well as heated rear seats. And then the fully loaded premium version adds 20-way full leather seats, an LCD disco dash, the adaptive full range cruise control, front and rear auto braking system at low speeds, and an additional pre-collision system. The 2014 CTS is a thoroughly impressive vehicle. This is really the first entry from Cadillac that can truly compete with the Mercedes-Benz E-Class as well as the BMW 5 Series. That's a really great track record for Cadillac because the ATS truly competes with the C-Class and the 3 Series from BMW and Mercedes, and so this means that they now have a 1-2 punch in this space. All they're really missing is a true BMW 7 Series and Mercedes-Benz S-Class competitor. Now comes the time for the trickiest question. Would I buy a Cadillac CTS? Yes, I'd buy one, but there are a few caveats. First off, I would probably skip the 3.6-liter V6 engine, not the twin turbo. I'm talking about the naturally aspirated one. This 2.0T model has a great weight balance, so it is an awful lot of fun out on the road. I also wouldn't buy a base model. The base instrument cluster is just too ugly for me, and I'm sorry about that, Cadillac, but it's made doubly ugly by the fact that this optional LCD instrument cluster is just really great. I mean, it's the best instrument cluster that I have seen on the market to date, and that includes things like the very expensive Jaguar XJ and the brand new Range Rover as well. This LCD instrument cluster is easily the best in the industry. So that pretty much rules out the $45,000 to $50,000 range vehicles. I probably would just buy the 3.6-liter twin turbo model because it is still a decent discount over something like a BMW 550i. It's a little bit more expensive than a BMW 528i fully loaded. However, that twin turbo V6 engine is a great engine, and you also get that 8-speed automatic. That's really my only knock against the 2.0T model, is that it doesn't have an 8-speed automatic, and pretty much everybody else in this segment either has an 8-speed or a 7-speed transmission, and that really is kind of a problem with this Cadillac CTS 2.0T that I hope they address soon. I think that if this had that 8-speed automatic transmission, this would easily be my choice in this 2-liter turbocharged market. But until it gets one, it's my second choice behind the BMW 528i, but it is a very, very close second. And again, there are some caveats there. So if you like infotainment and navigation and an LCD instrument cluster, then even without that 8-speed automatic, I'd rather have this Cadillac CTS. And that's a really tough call for me. I think the interior on the Cadillac is just as good as the BMW. I think that the exterior is more attractive than the BMW, but the interior and infotainment, really, it's kind of a balance depending on which model you get, whether or not you get that optional LCD instrument cluster or not, as well as whether you get some of the up-level trim options going on the inside of the Cadillac CTS. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2014 Cadillac CTS 2.0T. Be sure and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of our latest videos. And we will try our best to get our hands on the 2014 Cadillac CTS V Sport with that twin-turbo V6 engine. I don't expect to get it anytime soon, but I'm truly hoping that it's sometime in the first quarter of the 2014 calendar year.